Welcome to the C-Suite series on Channelchek. The executives featured will be interviewed by a licensed and accredited equity research analyst from Noble Capital Markets. Noble is a FINRA licensed SEC registered broker-dealer. All research written by Noble analysts is available on Channelchek.
Of the 6,000 small and microcap companies listed on Channelchek, in this program we are featuring Onconova Therapeutics. The stock symbol is ONTX. Noble analyst Ahu Demir will interview Dr. Stephen Fruchtman, the CEO, and Dr. Rick Woodman, the CMO. Onconova is a leading company in the treatment of pre-leukemia cancers. They are a late clinical stage company that may soon transform into commercial stage. And the company has plans to enter the treatment of lung cancer. Ahu is an accomplished Noble analyst with a PhD in chemistry. If you'd like to get Ahu's research on Onconova, on Channelchek.com, type in the ticker ONTX in the search box on the top left of the company section of the site. Before I turn it over to Ahu, I encourage you to stick around for closing comments when Ahu and I discuss the key takeaways from this interview. Ahu, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. So I think it will be best if we can take some quick introduction from Steve and Rick.
Thank you, Ahu. We're very happy to be able to present to the Noble Conference today virtually. It's a new way of communicating. It's been very educational. So my name is Dr. Stephen Fruchtman. I'm a hematologist oncologist by training. I was a former academic and ran the bone marrow stem cell transplant program at Mount Sinai in New York. I joined industry, I think, approximately 15 years ago, coincidentally joining my current colleague, Dr. Rick Woodman, at Orthobiotech J&J, where Rick and I worked on some of the most innovative products in hematology at Orthobiotech. And since J&J, I was at Novartis, where I also was working with Rick, again on different products. And since Novartis, had been at a number of very interesting small biotechs. Between Rick and I, we have probably gotten over 6 novel new medical entities approved in malignant hematology and oncology. And our goal together at Onconova is to continue to study a very unique product, rigosertib, that targets the RAS pathway. RAS is the most commonly mutated gene in cancer. We have very interesting data that's being presented currently at the European Hematology Association meeting regarding RAS in our pivotal trial, the INSPIRE trial, which is a trial studying rigosertib in high-risk second-line MDS, a global trial. We are very excited to anticipate a readout of this pivotal trial in second half of 2020. If this trial is positive, it will bring to the marketplace a unique drug for the first time in second-line high-risk MDS. These patients have no health authority approved drug in the world, and we hope to be the first. So these patients will have a therapeutic option for their underlying bone marrow stem cell disorder. And we look forward to this interview today. And thank you, Ahu, and to Noble Capital Markets.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for the introduction. And we are pleased to have you at our CEO interviews. Rick, can we also get a quick introduction on your side?
Yes, thank you, Ahu, and I look forward to this afternoon's interview. I, like Steve, have had a career in both academic medicine and industry. I was 16 years in an academic position at the University of Calgary in Canada. Subsequently went to Johnson & Johnson at Orthobiotech and worked on Procrit. In 2006, I subsequently joined Novartis Oncology and worked on several compounds over the next 12 years. During that time, I had my second opportunity to work with Steve, and from that, we've brought together our vast experience both in academic medicine and industry to Onconova. And we're very excited to share with you our thoughts and vision about rigosertib and its involvement in not only MDS, but potentially other diseases. So thank you in advance, and I look forward to this afternoon's interview.
Thank you, Rick. Likewise on our side as well. So I'll refer my first question to Steve. Although you provided a little bit of the overview on Onconova, could you maybe get into a little bit more details about the current portfolio and also where you see company evolving in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, our most important event, no doubt, before the end of the year, as I mentioned, will be the readout of the INSPIRE trial in high-risk MDS. Should this prove to be positive and we surpass our regulatory hurdle, which is a prolongation of the lives of patients with MDS who are randomized to rigosertib versus physician's choice of therapy. Because of the high unmet medical need, we believe the FDA has given us a very easy hurdle, hopefully, to surpass. We need to show a 28% improvement in their survival over the physician's choice of care. And no doubt, we believe, because should this trial be positive, we will form the foundation, rigosertib will, in combination with other drugs that may even be more impressive in combination to both prolong the lives of these patients and to improve their marrow function. All of these patients, unfortunately, typically are transfusion dependent. So in addition to prolonging their lives, in a subsequent study, which we hope to initiate in negotiations with the FDA when we have once we have pivotal data suggesting that the INSPIRE trial is positive, we will work with the agency to optimize our next trial, which will be oral rigosertib with injectable azacitidine in first-line high-risk MDS. Based on our negotiations with the FDA already, we believe that will be a response trial, and the response will be a combination of complete response plus partial response based on strict definition of those responses. And what's important about those responses are that they normalize the peripheral blood count to transform a transfusion-dependent patient into one for a period of time that will be transfusion independent. Clearly, again, meeting a tremendous unmet medical need. To be dependent on blood transfusions is tremendously burdensome, both to the patient and the health economics for these patients. And we believe a drug such as rigosertib that can both prolong the life based on INSPIRE, improve their marrow function when combined with the standard of care azacitidine, will be transformative for these patients. In addition to MDS, we will be announcing shortly that we will be initiating, in collaboration with a principal investigator, using an IIS, investigator-initiated study in KRAS mutated non-small cell lung cancer. That trial will begin soon. It will involve patients who progress on first-line standard of care, which typically involves an immuno-oncology product such as Keytruda. We will be combining oral rigosertib plus Optivo in patients who progressed on standard of care who have KRAS mutated non-small cell lung cancer. Finally, to move away from rigosertib for a moment, in addition, we have a very novel CDK4/6 inhibitor that also targets a mutated ARC5 gene. These are multi-billion-dollar commercial products. Palbociclib is one such product. CDK4/6 inhibitors are drugs that have regulatory approval for women with hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative metastatic breast cancer. We believe and hope that ON-123300, because it targets an additional mutated gene, we have already demonstrated efficacy in preclinical models that breast cancer cell lines that are resistant to the commercially available CDK4/6 inhibitors are, in these preclinical metastatic breast cancer cell lines, responsive to ON-123300. And under Rick's direction, we will be putting in for an IND with the US FDA and anticipate a phase 1 trial, hopefully before the end of the year.
Thank you for that, Steve. That sounds very exciting. So I will just summarize. We are talking about the ongoing clinical trial, phase 3 clinical trial of INSPIRE second-line MDS for second-line MDS patients for rigosertib, and 2 trial initiations, one of them on lung cancer, solid tumor, and the other one is the first-line MDS patients. Both of them include oral rigosertib in combination with other drugs. And the last one, the fourth one, is the CDK4/6 program, the IND filing expected end of this year. So it sounds like a multi-asset portfolio with potentially a commercial stage biotech company for the next 6 to 12 months that we foresee.
Agree, and an excellent summary, and thank you.
So Rick, I will refer my next questions to you. So if you would talk about rigosertib, and considering it might potentially be marketed, receive an approval in the next 6 to 12 months, how do you see the differentiating factors of rigosertib, and considering the unmet need in the myelodysplastic syndrome, which might potentially follow a similar trend as we had seen for the acute myeloid leukemia landscape, where we did not see any approvals for over a decade, but then it came with 7 approvals in the past 3 years. So can we get your perspective on that, how rigosertib fits in with the MDS landscape?
Yes. Well, thank you for the question, Ahu. I think clearly everyone recognizes MDS high risk is a huge unmet medical need. It's much like multiple myeloma was 12 years ago, 15 years ago, and CLL were, in which you really had limited therapeutic options. And over the past decade, those diseases have enjoyed tremendous advance. Many new therapies have been added. Patient segmentation has occurred, and now they're on to combinations of doublets, triplets, even 4 drugs. I think MDS is on the verge of potentially a similar path. And this is not uncommon for hematologists, and it's long overdue. The novel mechanism of action, the RAS pathway inhibiting RAS-RAF interaction, as well as other downstream regulators of the RAS pathway, is clearly an advantage and a novel mechanism of action over the existing or the other new therapies that are coming in MDS. And I think obviously when looking at combination therapies, and that's clearly where the therapeutic field is going in MDS, just like AML, just like myeloma, just like CLL. How can we get to combinations? Combinations will occur when you combine agents with different mechanisms of action. And so I think that stands rigosertib in good stead. I think the other thing that is important is that if Inspire's positive, we're coming with positive survival data, which is the highest regulatory endpoint to achieve, that has the greatest clinical impact for patients. And so a novel mechanism, potentially an oral formulation in development that we will proceed with, and the overall survival benefit makes for it a very attractive agent, not only in the setting of second line in which there's no therapies, as Steve mentioned, but for combinations. And the sooner we get it approved, that's when we start to really understand the full potential of the drug, when we get it into the hands of other investigators in other settings. And so I see those as the differentiating factors for rigosertib. In my opinion, the IV administration is no more burdensome than the current standard of care azacitidine. And so I think it will be well received by patients and physicians because of the safety profile and the advantages I mentioned.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick, for that explanation. I'll follow up with a similar question. So there are no approved treatments. However, it's a crowded landscape. There are a lot of late-stage pipeline assets currently in development. And I believe you already answered partially to these questions, but I just want to emphasize for the audiences. So considering all these late stage, not rigosertib is the latest stage. However, there are some other assets that's coming to the late stage, 47 and venetoclax. And how do you see rigosertib fitting into with these pipeline assets in case they would also advance in the clinic?
Right. Well, I think what's going to be the key for us is genomic data. Genomic profiling, not only from the Inspire study, but from other studies, is going to help us decide which patients benefit from which therapies. And I think as we get combinations, as we understand the genomics, patient segmentation will happen. And certain combinations, certain agents will be given in subsets of patients, perhaps based on genomics, like some of the AML agents are based entirely on mutational status. I think those are the kinds of information that will help us decide. And it's not surprising that MDS has lagged behind AML, in that MDS is a much more difficult hematologic malignancy to treat. The patients tend to be older. They tend to have a more refractory disease, less tolerant of certain therapeutic options. And so the advancement in that field, it needs a new approach, and genomics may in fact be that opportunity that gives us that.
Thank you for that, Rick. I do agree. I believe AML, seen as biomarker, determined patient segmentation, and MDS potential would experience a very similar shift as well. So I'll refer my next question to Steve. So beyond MDS, what other opportunities are there? We already mentioned, I just wanted to emphasize the solid tumor section, also the RAS mutated pediatric indications as well. Could we elaborate on those, and also maybe about the potential timelines when we expect to see data, clinical advancement, and so forth?
So I already mentioned, and will repeat, that we have an investigator-initiated study that we anticipate entering our first patient any day now. Interestingly enough, this study was approved at the institution quite a while ago. But COVID-19, I'm not sure your audience realizes this, has stopped all new clinical research at the vast majority of cancer hospitals in the US. That now has been lifted, and therefore we anticipate the opening of the new study of oral rigosertib with an immuno-oncology product as a phase 1 in KRAS mutated lung cancer. But if you think about the KRAS mutations and the RAS mutations in general, we are reviewing other applications to develop rigosertib more broadly. There are patients with melanoma, for instance, who have mutations along the RAS pathway. Patients with multiple myeloma who are highly refractory to a variety of current therapeutic options have mutations of the RAS pathway as well. So we believe rigosertib is a multi-dimensional agent with potential many indications because of the nature of the tumors, both hematologic and solid tumors, that we will begin to study. Obviously, a positive INSPIRE trial with a positive opportunity to develop a commercial asset will bring in the required monies to be able to develop this agent more broadly. Rick mentioned the revolution in genomics, in hematological malignancies, specifically AML and MDS. So we have data that patients with, for instance, RAS mutations have a greater likelihood of progressing on azacitidine than patients who have other mutations. TP53, for instance, is considered a very bad mutation in cancer. Our data suggests that a mutation of the RAS pathway predicts for greater progression on the standard of care than a mutation of TP53. So clearly, a tremendous unmet medical need that we hope will be addressed by rigosertib. Now, these are acquired mutations, typically, but interestingly enough, not universally. These patients have mutations in their bone marrows, but they are not inherited mutations. They've been acquired over the course of a lifetime for whatever reason, be it viruses that infect the bone marrow, toxic substances in the environment that we may or may not be aware of, chemotherapy, for instance, for other diseases, breast cancer, lung cancer, that affects the marrow negatively will also predict for the development of MDS. But unfortunately, there are children who are born with mutations of the RAS pathway. Since they are born with a mutation of the RAS pathway, the RAS mutated gene is present in all the cells of their body, just not limited to, for instance, to the bone marrow. But because they are in the bone marrow, and the bone marrow is the most rapidly replicative cell population in our bodies, these children unfortunately do develop a leukemic syndrome that's called juvenile myelomonocytic leukemia, JMML, and develop other tumors as well, such as unusual sarcomas, and develop other problems that are not necessarily malignant. They develop cardiomyopathies, for instance, as well. And some of these unfortunate children need a heart transplant because they lose their cardiac function. Under the leadership of Rick's team, as part of our application to the European health authorities, we will be developing a pediatric investigational protocol called a PIP, where these children with these RAS mutated cancers will be studied with rigosertib. We're in the process of putting those protocols together. And when we submit a health authority application to the European medical health authorities, our PIP will be included in that. And we look forward to hopefully helping these children as well. There are no therapeutic options available that work in these children. Should they develop a myeloid leukemia of their marrows, they all need a transplant if a transplant's available. And even after an allogeneic stem cell transplant, the recurrence rate is very high. So there's a variety of approaches that Rick's team is considering for these children, for the utility, the potential utility of rigosertib to help these children. So I hope that answers the question.
It does, thank you. And if you would move away from rigosertib and go to CDK4/6 program, Steve, I'll refer to you. What indications, we mentioned there will be an IND filing end of this year. What indications do you target? What tumors do you plan to go after for that program?
So once we are ready to open the first in human phase 1 trial with ON-123300, it will be a typical phase 1 study. Most, if not all, refractory cancers will be included, because the goal obviously is to establish the safe dose in these patients. But of course, we would like to see evidence of efficacy. So we will try, if it's possible, to bias our study to women who've already progressed on the commercially available CDK4/6 inhibitors. So it will be an all-comer typical phase 1 solid tumor study. And we would hope to have some patients who have exhausted their therapeutic options, who've already been treated with a CDK4/6 inhibitor as part of the phase 1 to see if there's evidence of efficacy in these patients as well. And no doubt once we establish the safe dose to move forward into phase 2, those are the kind of patients who have failed commercially available CDK4/6 inhibitors that we will be focusing on to further the development of ON-123300.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. And Rick, my next question comes to you. So as we've seen at one of the past conferences, Pfizer CDK4/6 inhibitor failed in the HER2 positive breast cancer. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this program and also how your CDK4/6 program differentiates from the currently marketed ones. As we know, it's a very large and very competitive field.
Yes, well, thank you for that question. I think first of all, the HER2 positive population is much more difficult than some of the other subsets that the CDK4/6 inhibitors have been approved for. I think their value to treatment of women and men with breast cancer that are hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative, is unequivocal across all three. And so the importance of CDK4/6 inhibition is well established. Now I think the goal is how do you optimize it? And I think there's plenty of room for optimization. Right now, those agents are combined with hormonal therapy of various types, and that's how their registration was. Keep in mind, this therapy, the current the CDK4/6, are not curative. Patients who start with advanced metastatic breast cancer, a huge subset of them in all the studies with all of the commercially available CDK4/6 inhibitors progress. So there's still tremendous opportunity to improve their benefit. One approach is with agents such as ON-123300, which is very novel in that instead of combining two inhibitors, it has dual inhibition within the same molecule. Now, there's much to be learned about this approach and this particular compound. As Steve mentioned, we're filing an IND and we'll do a first-in-human study. But there's preclinical data to suggest that one way of delaying or improving the occurrence of resistance to CDK4/6 inhibitors is through ARK5 inhibition. I think that we'll have to see the results, demonstrate that clinically, but preclinical work suggests this is a rational approach. Obviously, we need to understand tolerability of this dual inhibitor, but it is a very unique and novel approach. I think the other thing that I would mention in addition, if you look on clinicaltrials.gov, you can see all the other tumors in which all of the CDK4/6 inhibitors are being investigated. And I think the ability to have a dual inhibitor may provide the opportunity to study this compound in some of these non-breast cancer tumors. And so the opportunity is there as well. But the first step is obviously to complete the first in human, understand the safety profile, and understand the dosing. But we're very excited about this opportunity, and it is a very novel compound that Onconova has based on the current available agents.
Thanks, Rick. So as we've spoken about multiple assets, multiple data readouts, and commencement of clinical trials, Steve, I would like to highlight and summarize a few of the key value-generating catalysts in the next 6 to 12 months for our audience. I think that will be very helpful.
Well, thank you, Ahu. I will shorten that timeline to the next 6 months
Sure.
because we have some key catalysts that are coming. So one is the INSPIRE trial. We announced that we have full accrual to the trial. So all of our requirements for 360 patients have been randomized. We have over-randomized a bit because it's always good to have some safety in there, to have a few more patients in case patients are asked to be thrown out by the FDA or are on review, do not meet all the eligibility. So we have met our requirement for randomization. In March, we announced that we have over 85% of our survival events. Now this is now June. So we know how many patients we who meet the hurdle every month. And we anticipate, as we've announced, before the end of the year, we will have this key pivotal data to be analyzed and unblind ourselves and announce to the investment community the results of the INSPIRE trial in high-risk MDS. Once we have unblinded ourselves and know we have positive pivotal data, we will finalize our new protocol with the FDA, the combination of oral rigosertib with azacitidine in first-line MDS. As Rick mentioned, INSPIRE will show a prolongation of survival, we hope, the highest regulatory endpoint one can meet, but already we will move into first-line MDS to have a larger patient population that we can help. And that study will be designed to prove that we help their bone marrow function to work better and make these patients transfusion independent for a significant period of time. We will now also venture into the solid tumor space with our new trial as an IIS, an investigator-initiated study in KRAS mutated lung cancer, a tremendous unmet medical need. All the patients will advance on the first-line standard of care. It's commercially a huge opportunity. I believe it's accurate to say that lung cancer is the most common cause of a malignant death in the US, if not the world. So we hope to see both safety data and efficacy signal in KRAS mutated non-small cell lung cancer. And finally, we will have opening a trial of our new drug product, as we've described, ON-123300, hopefully also before the end of the year. So we have 4 major catalysts before the end of the year: readout of the INSPIRE trial, formalizing a new protocol in high-risk first-line MDS, continuing with a KRAS mutated non-small cell lung cancer trial, and also beginning trials with our new agent, ON-123300, before the end of this year.
Sounds great, and it sounds like a very exciting time for the company. Looking forward to all these catalysts. Dear Steve and Rick, thank you very much for your time and sharing your thoughts and strategies with us. We look forward to follow the story.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Ahu, this was a very interesting presentation. I would have to say most of this was probably over my head. Obviously, you have a great scientific background, so you were able to converse on a different level than I would, definitely. But there was a couple of things that I, just as a viewer, probably would ask. For one, I'm not really familiar with MDS, and I was wondering if you can just explain that, and because they made a lot of references to it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Michael. So myelodysplastic syndrome is a bone marrow disease. So the group of cancers that immature blood cells in the bone marrow do not mature and do not become healthy blood cells. So it used to be classified as AML previously, leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia. However, last 2 decades it was distinguished. So it's basically a precursor of AML. So the patients are identified as MDS patients later develop AML, which is a leukemia, hematological malignancy, which is a liquid tumor type in patients. So basically it's a bone marrow disorder and a type of liquid cancer.
Gotcha. And then they were making references to the RAS pathways. Can you kind of give a little background on that?
Of course, yeah, happy to do that. So RAS is a gene that is most highly mutated type of gene in cancer. 30% of cancers overall have RAS mutations, including 90% of pancreatic cancer patients have KRAS mutation. So it's a highly mutated gene in cancer, and that has been really popular in the recent few years with Amgen and Mirati's small molecules targeting RAS cancer. So it is a very important gene in cancer research.
Gotcha. And it was a little confusing to me. I didn't know how many assets they actually have, how many drugs they actually have. So I was wondering if you can explain that. And then also, if you could just rank for me, like, what do you think are the number 1, 2 things that we should look for this company?
Okay, yeah, of course. So they do have actually 2 assets, rigosertib, one of them, but they are using it in 3 different clinical trials. One of them is currently ongoing, which is in the second-line high-risk MDS patients. Rigosertib is the RAS pathway inhibitor. So if I would have to rank, the first one would be second-line MDS patients. Number 2 will be first-line MDS patients. Number 3 will be lung cancer, rigosertib in lung cancer. So these 3 clinical trials will be for rigosertib. And the second asset is the CDK4/6 inhibitor that is at the preclinical stage, and the company is planning to advance it in the 4th quarter of 2020 for multiple cancer indications. So 2 assets, 4 clinical trials, 3 of them are for rigosertib, and MDS would be the highly ranked indication for them.
Ahu, thank you for bringing the management team to us. I might have to go back and listen again now with all that information. I probably understand it even more. So I appreciate
that. Sounds great.
That. It sounds like a very interesting company.
It certainly is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.